You ever post something online, maybe your photo or some good news, and then you find yourself just, checking your phone every 2 minutes, just waiting for those likes and comments to start rolling in? Yeah, we've all been there. It's kind of how our world works now. But what if? What if there's a totally different way to measure our own worth? One that doesn't depend on what everyone else thinks. That's what we're going to dive into.
It's a really simple question, right? But the answer, well, the answer pretty much shapes your whole life, your choices, your happiness. I mean, seriously, just for a second, think about it. When you decide to do something, who are you really doing it for?
Look, if we're being totally honest with ourselves, for most of us, the answer is theirs. It's our parents, our friends, our boss. Heck, it's even that random crowd of strangers on social media. We're sort of taught from day one to look outside of ourselves to figure out if we're doing okay. But then there's this other path. What if the most important person's approval, the only one that really, truly sticks, comes from you? That's the huge idea we're digging into today. It's about switching from an external report card to your own internal compass.
So to really get this, we have to understand the environment we're all swimming in. You could call it the like economy. It's this world where our value feels like it can be tallied up with clicks and hearts and shares. And believe me, it's messing with our heads more than we think.
The best way to picture it is like a validation treadmill. You post something, you get that little buzz from the likes, but then it fades, right? So you got to post again, maybe run a little faster this time, just to get that same high. It is absolutely exhausting because the finish line just keeps moving. And here's the kicker, you're not actually getting anywhere. Okay, so if we're all just stuck on this crazy treadmill, how in the world do we get off? Well, the answer is all about building something called internal validation. It's about learning to generate your own approval from the inside out. Now, the key word in this whole definition is independent. This doesn't mean you have to go live in a cave and ignore everybody. Not at all. It just means that deep down, at your core, your self-worth isn't bouncing around based on what other people think that day. You get to be the final judge in your own life.
A really helpful way to think about this is with a scorecard. We all have one, whether we know it or not. The only question is it an external one that other people handed you, or is it an internal one that you wrote for yourself?
Let's just break this down. So the external scorecard, that's all about chasing likes. The main motivation there is this fear of what other people will think, which just leaves you feeling anxious and constantly reacting to everything. But the internal scorecard, that's totally different. It's focused on your standards. It's driven by a desire to be your authentic self. And the result is you feel way more grounded and honestly a lot more resilient when things get tough. All right, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually start living this way? How do we use that internal scorecard? Well, it really just comes down to building some better habits. So let's look at what internally validated people actually do day to day. Here are the 6 big ones. First, they unplug from the constant performance of life. They set their own finish lines, not the one society gives them. They learn to trust their gut. They want real feedback to get better, not just empty praise to feel good. They're actually okay with being alone. And this one is huge. They celebrate the process, not just the win at the end. This quote just perfectly nails that idea of defining your own milestones. This isn't about being a downer on your birthday. It just means they don't need a special day on the calendar for everyone to pay attention to them to feel good about themselves. Their self-worth isn't tied to one big day of attention. They know their value every single day. And let's zoom in on that first habit for a sec. Unplugging from the performance. This is a big reason why a lot of people who operate this way just aren't on social media that much, or at all. It's not because they're antisocial. It's because they'd rather live their life than spend all their energy curating it for an audience. That private moment is worth more to them than any public praise they could get for it.
So, what's the big payoff? After building all these habits and using this internal scorecard, what do you actually get? Well, it boils down to one incredibly powerful word: freedom.
This is what it's all for. I mean, imagine it. Imagine feeling less anxious about being judged. Imagine someone criticizes you, and instead of feeling crushed, you can just look at it and decide if it's useful or not. That's resilience. When you're the source of your own approval, you build this solid, authentic sense of who you are. And you finally have the freedom to just be yourself.
When you get right down to it, this is the core difference. A weather vane just spins around, pointing whichever way the wind is blowing. It's totally at the mercy of outside forces, like public opinion. But a compass has its own true north, built right in. It knows its own direction, no matter what the weather is doing. That's what internal validation gives you. And that brings us right back to where we started. It's a choice you get to make every single day, in big ways and small ones. So the real question is, Whose scorecard are you going to choose to live by?
Thanks for watching. Subscribe our channel.